work the work in order to get them to be okay with me presenting this. And it's because, as I said to them, this is completely different than anything else that people talk about at the convention. How many people have been to a rowing convention? Anybody? Okay. So when you go to the rowing convention as a coach or as a rower, there's all this stuff on technique. There's all this stuff on physiology. After being in the sport for 20 years, I guess a little over 20 years now, I'm so tired of that stuff. There's no magic pill. That you can't, I'm not going to train masters women like they train the national team women. Come on, right? Can somebody just talk to me about the things that I do? So that's where I met up with Jen and did this talk. So here is the question that I have for you. How many of you are athletes? Raise your hand. Okay. I see some people, they're sort of like, maybe. How many of you are competitive? Okay, so this is interesting. So we have some people who did not raise their hands as being an athlete, but as soon as I said competitive, they raised their hand. And then there are some people who didn't raise their hand for being competitive, but did raise their hand for being athletes. So let's talk about this thing. If you are not obsessed with the life you are living, change it. I don't know if you can see that. It's a double. This was me. I was not happy with the life that I was living professionally. And my coaching experience at the time that I started to work on this stuff in terms of looking at masters women and competitive behavior, I had coached juniors, I had coached collegiates, I had coached masters. And I was currently coaching a master's crew. There was something wrong. There was something just not quite right for me. And I was trying to figure out what that was. I was not happy, and I wanted to figure out why competitive was a dirty word. And what my experience was, and has been pretty consistently, is when I ask a group of women, do you consider yourself an athlete? Boom. People are like, yep, I'm an athlete. Do you consider yourself competitive? No. And more often than not, I will have women who will say to me these words, I'm not like that. And I'm like, what? Not like that? That's fascinating. What does that mean? I'm not like that. Like those people. Right? So what does that mean? And I wanted to do better. I wanted to feel excited about the coaching, and I wanted these women to feel excited about what they were doing, and that we could do better as a team, as a club, as a culture. We could do better. So here's what I was seeing on the team. Club membership was like plateaued or stagnant. People were coming in for these Learn to Row days but not staying. Or they'd stay for a little bit, go through the Learn to Row thing, and then leave after that. So club retention was low. There was an in-group and an out-group. Right? So there were a group of women who were like sort of the cool kids, and then there were a group of women who were not. Let me know if any of this sounds familiar. It was a limited competitive pool for me as a coach. I had an 8 plus maybe 1 or 2 women on a team of 20, 25. That doesn't work for me as a coach. I'm a competitive coach. I want more women rowing, because if I have more rowers, I can make faster boats. Right? I have a bigger pool to choose from. There was an exclusionary environment, absolutely. There were the competitive women, and then everybody else. And God forbid if one of these everybody else's got put into the boat with the competitive women for a practice. So I wanted to create an environment of opportunity for everyone, competitive opportunity, because I happen to believe that being having the opportunity to compete develops way more than just your athleticism. It develops all of those character skills that I talked about in the last talk. I wanted to create an environment of inclusion and support, because this does not happen enough among women, and I don't know why. I could make some guesses, but in my little world of rowing at the time, I was like, yeah, no, not working for me. We need to do something different. And I wanted to create an environment of competitive success. I wanted this team to be one of those teams that people are like, oh yeah, I know them. They're good. They're fast. So, let's start with the fact that you are unique, if you didn't already know this, much like these puppy dogs. Do I have your attention now? Oh, I miss those kids. Okay, so you have long-term club involvement. This is very different than a junior or a collegiate rower. You will be involved in your club for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. It's not going to happen on the junior or collegiate side. At the most for juniors, it's 6 years if you start rowing in middle school. For collegiates, at the most, it's 5. You have to negotiate your life harmony. I don't believe in balance. I think that's a bunch of bullshit. Life balance. I'm sorry. I'm just putting it out there. This is vulnerability. So I don't believe in balance, because I think there are some times in your life when there are some things that are louder than others, much like a symphony. So you have to harmonize. You know, there are instruments that are louder than others at different parts in that particular piece of music. Much like your life, there are times when other things are louder than some things. There will be times when things outside of this are louder than rowing, and you need to focus on those. So maybe you're not here as much as you had been in the past. Maybe now this is the loud thing in your life. So it's about harmonizing all of those things. Much more complicated with adults, living lives, with families and professions. God forbid, another hobby that you like to do besides rowing. Right? All these other things. You are all professionally driven people. This is the way rowers are. Rowers are just driven individuals. And so you are also maybe high-level professionals. Maybe some of you are lawyers, doctors, engineers, people who are in charge of your area, and then you come here and you're not. You're not in charge, which is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to not be in charge, right? But sometimes that's a hard transition for folks to make. So they bring stuff into the boathouse. You had varied physical experiences. So you have a much wider range of physical experiences than a junior team or a collegiate team. You have varied athletic experiences and identification. So some of you may have been athletes in the past. Some of you may not. Right? Some of you may have been athletes as kids, not collegiate athletes, and now you're being athletes. Right? Some of you identify as athletes. Some of you do not. And then you have very competitive experiences. Some of you identify as competitive. Some of you do not. Right? So, tell me your name again. Lauren talked about not being exposed to being competitive, but being successful. And so, clearly, there's a level of competition that goes into being successful. I happen to believe that we are all competitive, period, full stop. You are a human being. I mean, you compete for a parking spot. Right? You compete for the best line in the grocery store. Right? We're competing all the time, constantly. And so what happens when we get a bunch of women together in a room and then competition happens? Right? Suddenly, it's a completely different deal. So, come on. So when you're a novice, We want to move people from being novice to being an athlete to ideally being a competitive athlete. That's the idea. So we want to keep these two things in mind. There's a varied athletic identification and a varied competitive identification. So as a novice rower, here are the things that come up that are brand new. And somebody mentioned this about being coached, right? Having this new experience of being coached. Maybe you've never been coached before. And so now you've got somebody telling you what to do and how to correct something. And that's new. You have a new language that you're trying to learn. Rowing has its own vocabulary, right? So you're trying to get that down. You have a new physical experience of actually being in the boat. What is it like to be in the boat, to sit in the seat, to hold the stick? You got a new social environment. So maybe you know somebody who was here, you know a couple people, but it's a new thing. You are experiencing being in this boathouse with these other women who are athletic, as far as you can tell, who are like, everybody's like knows what they're doing. Grab the boat, carry it down, put it in the water. They make it look so easy, right? It's all a new thing, and you're kind of sussing out sort of what they're all groups, social groups. You're trying to sort of get a feel for that, and you're exploring a new side of yourself. If you've never been an athlete before, or if you've never even been active before, now you're coming into this experiencing a completely different side of yourself. So this is what's happening for the novice rower, right? And everybody's had this experience. Everybody on earth who is rowing has been a novice rower. I think that's pretty awesome, right? That everybody has had these experiences in some way or another. You have to find your way, and you have to feel vulnerable. You're going to feel vulnerable. When you are a novice coming into the situation, these are things that are just going to happen. So, in a few words, 1 or 2 sentences, 3 sentences the most, who wants to share what their experience was like being a novice rower? Or throw out a couple of words. I'll start. Go.
Nerve-wracking.
There you go. Yeah.
Taking out of everything.
Say again.
I had to take it out of everything.
Okay. Better living through chemistry. Anybody else?
I don't know. I was very intimidated when I became a novice. I was very intimidated.
Yep. Absolutely. Intimidation factor.
Mind blowing.
Good. That's a good one.
When the first time on the boat, we're like, lock off, we're switching you out. And I'm like, you want me to get out of this boat and get into that boat?
Yeah.
We had Sue Ann and I were novices together, and we had the good fortune to use Sue to know what we were doing. Yeah, right straight across into the reeds.
So in addition to all of those things that I felt, it was also fun.
There you go. Yeah. Excited. Good. Excellent. Yeah.
I would say because of this experience, being here as a novice, I never felt so supported. Something completely left for it.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Okay. So, how do we get someone to actually identify as an athlete? What does that look like? So there are really 2 primary components to that, and this is through academic information. These are all studies that I went through, and I will tell you that the studies I went through, none of them were on masters women, because there are no studies. If you know any kids out there who are getting their masters or PhDs and they want to pick a thesis or a dissertation topic, masters women athletes would be at the top of my list, because there is nothing really out there about masters women athletes. There's a little bit about swimmers from a group in Canada, but pretty much this is based on age group athletes or collegiate athletes. So you need 2 components to identify as an athlete. The first one is an athletic competence. So feeling like you are athletically competent, that you have skills, and remind yourself about the skill acquisition, right, that we talked about before. And then athletic encouragement or support. So support from family, from friends, from a spouse, a partner, from your team. You need to feel supported. So these are the two elements that you need to be able to identify as an athlete. So, skill acquisition. What do you need to be able to acquire skills? You need coaching. And as far as I'm concerned with adult athletes, it is different. The coaching needs to be transparent, it needs to be autonomous, and it needs to be collaborative. It's very different than coaching juniors or collegiate rowers. You can have some collaboration with some collegiates on specific levels, but in general, you are not collaborating with them. But with you guys, that's very different. You have to have these levels that I talked about in order to learn and to acquire skill in a good environment. So you have to start out as a novice and then go to intermediate and then go to advanced. You have to jump from novice to advanced. And you have to have a clear path, which is part of this development, right? Of moving, progressing from one level to the next. And you have to have exposure to competing at every level. So it ideally should not be that as a novice rower, you're not competing until you get up to this other level. Because you want to develop that level of competition over the steps that you're in while you're learning. Because you're also learning about being competitive. So that's the skill acquisition part, right? We want to develop skills. Now this is the support part. You have to have support from other Masters women. And clearly that's what happens, right? No doubt that that's happening here. There's a lot of support. There has to be engagement, socializing. You have to be talking to someone and say, hey, why don't you come out to coffee with us? We go out after practice, or we're going to get together this weekend and go for a hike. Why don't you come with us? Engaging and drawing people in to show that support. There has to be mentoring and modeling. So if you are an experienced rower, and you know that there's a whole new group of novices who have come in who are not as experienced, you want to model appropriate boat carrying, appropriate oar carrying. You want to show them how it's done. You want to ask them how they're doing. You want to be like pro tips, equipment, blisters, technique. Hey, how are you doing with your hands? Do you need some help with blisters? How was your row today? Engaging, having a conversation. Because they're, like Coach said, intimidated and feeling vulnerable and trying to learn a new language and having a different physical experience than they've ever had. And you know how it is. You've been there. You know what it's like. But more often than not, what happens is the experienced rowers in the boathouse are like, oh, yeah, you figured it out because nobody told me. What is that all about, right? Like, we want to help each other. Encouraging. I'll say. So, if we have good skill acquisition and we're acquiring skills and feeling good about that direction, and we have support in our life and from our teammates, then we start to identify as athletes.
Can I just add one other for me? Because we are in spandex for the first time.
That's awesome. How did you know you were an athlete? I was wearing spandex. Absolutely. Totally. So now we've moved this woman from being a novice to being an athlete because we've provided her a good environment to acquire skill. She's feeling successful at that. She's developing her athletic skills, and we've supported her as a team to experience herself as that athlete and to see other athletes around her, other women who identify as athletes around her. So now how do we get to the competitive part. Well, let's go back and let's talk about the messages that we all got as women growing up about what it meant to be competitive. And what it meant was that it was generally, if you were not in an athletic environment, that you were competing socially, right? There was an in-group, there was an out-group. And there are some of these words that would pop up for people about that. Hello. So catty, mean girl, backbiting, exclusionary, cliquish. These are all underground ways of competing that we were taught as women, generally for boys, that produces a feeling inside of our bodies that is not good when we think about being competitive. And unless you've reframed that for yourself, this is what's going to come up for you when somebody says, "Are you competitive?" So, what is your experience of competitive behavior? We're not going to talk about it. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about what your experience was growing up, what your experience was maybe in college, what your experience is now outside of here, or maybe in here. So, here's what happens when women compete, when they feel competitive anxiety. So you're going to feel competitive anxiety if you have a lack of skills. So if you feel like you're put into a position where you're not as skilled as you need to be in order to perform well, but we're going to go race, and I'm going to be in this boat, and I've never raced before, and I don't know what I'm doing, and everybody else in the boat does know what they're doing, you're going to feel this competitive anxiety. If you're not accepted by your teammates, because of this maybe, or because who knows why, you're going to be feeling anxiety about being competitive. If you're feeling a pressure to perform, I have to be at a certain level that I don't feel comfortable with, kind of relates back to lack of skills, then you're going to be experiencing competitive anxiety. So pressure to perform could come from a lot of different places. It could come from a coach saying, not that this doesn't happen here, but you have to be at this certain level. You have to hit a certain number on the erg, or I need to see you in a seat race before I can decide whether you're going to be in the boat or not. That's a pressure to perform, and you will experience competitive anxiety. And then intra or internal squad competition. This is a big one in the studies that I looked at. So when women are put into a position on a team of being told, you are competing against her, it creates a very high level of competitive anxiety. Because we are all, as females, driven by our social connection to each other. That is an extremely important part of how we all relate to each other, our connection to each other. And if we think that something we're going to do is going to put that connection at risk, we don't want to do it. And so if the competition is set up as it's you against her, and someone thinks, but if I beat her, she's not going to like me anymore. We're friends, but if I go faster than her, what's going to happen? So it creates this competitive anxiety. So, this is directly from one of the studies. Women perceived internal competition as highly salient, personal, vindictive, and ultimately damaging to the team and to their sport experience. Yeah, internal competition in terms of, me against you on the same team. Right? And I put this picture up with this because it is incongruent, right? I love this picture. It's one of my favorite pictures, because that's what it's all about. So let's talk about the root of the word compete, because I think we all have this idea about competitive. So the root is competitve, and that actually means to strive together. Together. It doesn't mean I'm going to beat you, I'm going to annihilate you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to, right? Not all these words that we use when we're talking about teams competing against each other. It means we are pushing each other up to the point that we want to be. We are helping each other get to a better place. So we need to reframe being competitive in order to feel comfortable with this. So how do we do that?
Can I ask you something? If I'm refraining to be competitive, it's not I am refraining from my possibility to do the best and show a sign of weakness.
What's a sign of weakness?
Well, because I know I am very good. So if somebody cannot compete against me professionally, it's a different story. In sports, if she's better than I am, and we have to compete against each other, I have to do the best to beat her, because I know she's better.
Right.
But I'm not going to put anything else against her in our environment.
Right.
So I think we have to separate those things. If you cannot separate, then you can scratch each other, cut their tires or everything. That is a bullying kind of stuff.
That is a what?
Like bullying, like vandalism.
Right.
I don't think I have to refrain myself, or she has to refrain herself because she's better than I am. She has to do the best to make me to strive to
That's right.
to do the best.
And that's a perfect right what I was going to say.
Because if I am not going to do the best, she has to pull me all the time. I don't think it's fair game.
Right. So being competitive is first and foremost with yourself. Right? You are pushing yourself to be better. You want to be the best you can be, so you're competing with yourself. Right? So that increases your motivation. It supports your skill acquisition because you want to get better in terms of your skill. It's also with teammates. It is not against teammates. Right? You are helping to push each other. I want someone who's faster than me to be there so that I can try to get up to where she is. And I want someone who's maybe a little slower but pushing me to push me up to there. This is how we all get faster. So unless you recognize the fact that there are people around you that can push you to be better, and you see them instead as adversaries, you're not going to progress. So when it comes down to teammates, you've reduced competitive anxiety because it's with each other. You've increased our social connection because we're helping each other to get better. Now it's against other crews. Absolutely. All of us against them. Right? Let's go beat North Suburban. Right? Yeah.
So it's safe to say that you want to be better for your teammates, not better than your teammates.
Absolutely. And you want to be better for your teammates. You want every teammate to be better than where they sit right now today. And so what can you do to help that betterness happen? Right? Okay, so creates team cohesion around a shared pursuit. So here we go, reframing. It's open and honest. You are honest with yourself about the fact that you're competitive. It's okay. Right? That's all good. It's good to be competitive in a healthy way. Right? Not in a way that's subterranean. In a way that's open and honest. So when coach says, hey, what's your goal today? Well, I'm competing with myself because last time I got this and this time I want to get this. And I'm going to try to push outside my bubble. And trying to catch her. Everybody hear that? Trying to catch her. Right? That's okay. That's all right. And whoever her is should know you're trying to catch her. It's all good, right? Yeah, you come. Come on, bring it. Let's go. Because that's just going to make me faster. And it's going to make you faster to try to get to where I am. So this is transparency, develops trust, and encourages healthy competition. Healthy competition. Like Adam and Jake, right? I'm taking him out to lunch because I want to know how he does this thing where he's always beating me. And he tells him. Because why not? Because Jake wants Adam to be faster too. A competitor welcomes challenges. If you are not saying to somebody, I want you to be faster than me, I want you to get, then you are not a true competitor. So, not feel threatened by new blood. Be excited about it. You don't go fast by beating another girl, you go fast by being your best self, and bringing that girl with you. Coach, what's the theme? Thank you. That's what that is. This is from the boathouse at Zalac Rowing Club in San Diego. And it's the oldest women's rowing club in the nation that's still going. So, why does all of this matter? Well, it matters because we want to have comfort in a team environment. We want acceptance and we want support. We want to develop good rowers, right? Identifying as an athlete, and in my opinion, being competitive at some point, at some level, helps to do that. You want to develop a really strong club culture, and that's that supportive environment, right? Pushing outside your bubble of risking failure. You want to develop club growth. So this helps to do that. And the most important part is the personal growth. That's really all that matters, because it's really not about the rowing. It is, but it's not. So, competitive success, club growth, personal growth, that's why all of this matters. Happy rowers, happy club. So here's how it works. You're a learn to row novice. You come in, you get supported, you continue, build a positive club culture. You have a clear developmental path. You have competitive opportunities. You experience personal growth, and then you turn around and give it right back. This is the life cycle. That's it, right? That's awesome. And you know that this is what was happening before that happened. Own it, just own it. Own it. How many of you get the erg set up, and how many of you are like for the furthest away from the fastest people? Right? How many of you set it up so that you can be in an easier place? Why? It's okay to do that sometimes, sure. That's fine. I get it. We're not always about compete. It's good. But when you have the opportunity to sit next to somebody who's faster than you, you go sit next to her and you be like, you're faster than me, but I'm coming. It's all good. That's it. Thank you.